West Bradenton, the area west of US 41 and north of Cortez, is what most people refer to as West Bradenton. It's a beautiful area close to the beautiful beaches of Anna Maria Island, and it is attractive real estate. However, on today's video, we're going to explore a few problems that make this otherwise perfect area somewhat unattractive as well. Most people, when they move to the Bradenton area, are going to be quick to notice the natural beauty of West Bradenton, close to the water, rivers, trees, large mango trees, historic places like the town of Cortez that are beautiful fishing villages. It's really a great area, and there's a lot of new construction going on. In fact, on the west side of Bradenton, we're going to look at nearly 5,000 new houses being built. These empty fields around 75th Street are now being developed into new communities, and the influx of these new homes is really upsetting a lot of people in West Bradenton who like the more beachy, old school vibe and are not really into all this new home development. But nonetheless, West Bradenton is attractive real estate. Again, proximity to Anna Maria Island makes it highly desirable. It really is a perfect place to live from a lot of perspectives. However, not everything is perfect in West Bradenton. On today's video, I need you guys to learn a little bit about the area. You see that pink building right there? It is no longer in business, and it is around the back become an encampment for homeless people where people live in the balconies. Homelessness has really increased in West Bradenton, and when you get off the major roads, there are a few really rough neighborhoods. Looking at this neighborhood here, you'll notice that there's shopping carts on the road. That's the homeless people that drag them into this residential neighborhood. And I've done a lot of Uber driving in this area, and late at night when I'm doing my Uber driving, I notice that there's a lot of transactions going on. Basically, West Bradenton looks beautiful from the outside, but when you dig a little bit deeper, this area actually has a lot of problems. For one, like I said, homelessness is out of control, and you'll see homelessness in parking lots, businesses. No exaggeration, if I'm going from Lakewood Ranch to the beach, I'll drive through West Bradenton and I'll see 20, 15 homeless people just panhandling on the side of the road or sleeping on benches or waiting at bus stops or living in bus stops. The amount of homelessness in West Bradenton is really disproportionate for an area that looks somewhat beautiful. And if a building becomes vacant and abandoned, it is certain to become a homeless camp. Some of these buildings that have become abandoned have actually become so problematic that they've become outright, I don't even know what to call these things, basically homeless encampments where there's people living in cars, there's people living in the balconies, behind the buildings in tents, or just simply on the sidewalks in front of these abandoned buildings. Talking about people living in cars, just about every single large commercial business plaza in West Bradenton will have cars parked out front at night, and these are people that live in their cars. Right here to the right of our screen is an empty lot, and there was many homeless people camping out there. They recently came in and cleared it. In that same site, they were planning to build a homeless shelter for veterans. Many of the people that are homeless in this area are veterans, and they were planning to put a homeless shelter there, but the locals fought back and said that they don't want a homeless shelter in West Bradenton because it would attract bad people. It turns out that some of the people that were behind misleading information that was passed out in pamphlets and other media were anonymous because people believed that it was actually some city commissioners that were behind it, but they didn't want to put their name behind it. Now, we don't get too deep into politics on our YouTube channel, but it seems like politically they have really incompetent people in local government here, and that contributes to the problems. One of the biggest problems with development, like those large construction sites that are going on right now in West Bradenton, is the fact that many people believe that the local politicians are somewhat getting kickbacks from the developers, and they're going in and doing things that they're not supposed to do, like they're pushing back the mangrove swamps. Mangroves help protect, they're a natural buffer for hurricane storm surge, and this entire area here that's being developed in West Bradenton comes right up against the mangroves. And obviously the other question is, why are you building new communities just a few feet above sea level? Obviously the locals are not happy about this new influx of communities, especially because the price range means that now you're going to have a lot of affluent people living in West Bradenton, and this area really isn't that affluent. It's kind of like a middle class area. It isn't really the poorest area, it's not the richest, it's kind of like a middle ground. This business recently went in and they're already out of business. And if you look in the back, you can see shopping carts. There's already homeless people living there. And that's really what's weird about West Bradenton. On one end, you have all these kind of decrepit buildings for the homeless people. And on the other end, across the street, they're putting in these massive new communities that are going to definitely attract very wealthy people. They just recently opened a Starbucks out here in West Bradenton. So there's already like a complete change away from the poor people and more towards affluence. And the people that have been in West Bradenton for a long time, they're not really happy with this influx of wealth into their area. And it's questionable how these people are building a large community literally right on the water, as well as destroying the mangrove swamps, which are usually protected. But as you can see from many of these neighborhoods, they're not really all fancy areas. You're seeing duplexes, you're seeing rundown apartment buildings. A lot of West Bradenton really isn't that fancy. It's not like an outright hood, but at the same time, it also isn't like the fanciest area. Talking to a local, rents in this little area for the older apartments are running close to $1,600 to $1,700, and for something remodeled close to $2,000, which is a lot of money to live in an old rundown apartment building. Now, law enforcement has started to crack down on homelessness throughout the entirety of Bradenton, and recently a lot of the elderly, veteran, kind of less criminal and more vulnerable type of homeless people have moved into West Bradenton. So what's happened in Bradenton is like the people that are homeless, that are elderly or veterans, just less criminal-minded homeless people are pushing into West Bradenton. Some are even living on the islands very discreetly. But the problem is that the homeless people that are more vulnerable are really afraid to live in the core of Bradenton, because the core of Bradenton has so much crime, so much violence, and so much addiction that the homeless people that are elderly and they're not so criminal, they're all ending up in West Bradenton, because in West Bradenton, it's a little bit safer, basically. There's a little bit more police presence, and they're just able to live there safer, because living homeless in the core of Bradenton is a complete jungle. So like the younger, junkied out homeless people are all going to be in the core of the city, the more hardcore criminal homeless people. But you have a lot of homeless people in West Bradenton, females, people in wheelchairs, all those types of homeless people, they go to West Bradenton because it's a little safer for them. They're afraid to live in the core of the city. So you have this just amount of homelessness that's kind of actually the saddest type of homelessness, because these aren't really people that are homeless by choice. A lot of times they're people that have disabilities, they're in wheelchairs, they're elderly, they have mental problems. They're the homeless people that the cops are willing to let live in nicer areas, where like the more criminal-minded homeless people, they can't step foot in this side of West Bradenton. So you still have a problem, though, that it's close to Bradenton, and Bradenton has a lot of homelessness, and it's really going to affect your day-to-day living. Like these apartments that you see in here, I actually went in there and looked at the prices. They were like $1,700 to $2,000 a month to live in West Bradenton. They're old apartments. Some of these apartments flood. They smell like mold. I'm not going to say this particular, company or whatever, but I'm saying in general, we saw a lot of apartments in West Bradenton. The lure of living in West Bradenton is that you're so close to the beaches, where people are willing to live in a place that's a little bit more decrepit and run down and pay a lot of money for it, because you're 15 minutes from the beaches, let's say. Where kind of the newer, nicer suburbs, you're going to be 45 minutes to an hour to get to the beach. In West Bradenton, it's about 15 minutes. Now, when it was time for us to renew our lease, I looked at almost every single apartment complex in West Bradenton, and it seemed like most of them are very rundown, very decrepit, very expensive, and the environment in these apartments isn't that great. We're talking people smoking all over the place, people walking around in their boxers, flooded parking lots, extraordinarily high rents. The buildings smell like mold. They don't seem like they're keeping up the maintenance very well. It's basically a lot of money for old rundown buildings. There is one new apartment complex in West Bradenton off of 75th where all that construction's going on. And the apartments were beautiful. They were somewhat expensive, but the staff seemed very attentive, and we really liked it. The problem is you're adjacent to all that new construction, and who knows what that's going to bring. It could bring flooding, it could bring noise, it could bring road closures. Like, who knows how many complications are between living next door to this massive construction site. So it really wasn't worth moving into there yet. Maybe being a great option in the future, but as of now, it's like, well, why would you want to live next to this giant construction site? So one of the things I think that West Bradenton could use is better apartments. It seems like if you're renting, all the options are old, decrepit, and very expensive. They really don't have too many options for new apartments. And if you're buying a house, the houses aren't new either. The houses here are mostly old houses. So you're going to pay a lot of money for a house that's like from the 70s and 80s. Most people moving to Florida are going to want a new property. So if you're buying real estate, you're also looking at the inventory is old, decrepit houses close to sea level. Now, Bradenton hasn't had a massive storm surge yet, but it's definitely possible. And when it does happen, Bradenton is going to be a massive catastrophic site. It's going to be worse than Fort Myers, possibly like a Katrina type scenario, because you also have a lot of mobile homes in Bradenton. So it's really a disaster waiting to happen. And that is perhaps why it's mostly an older neighborhood with old houses and you don't see too much new construction, because after all, one day it is going to happen. When it does happen, it's going to be bad in West Bradenton because it's a low-lying area. There are a few high spots, but again, you're surrounded by water on all sides. The city of Fort Myers never thought it would happen, and it happened to them. Even with like a 4-foot storm surge, a lot of these areas like Palma, Sola, and Cortez have had minimal storm surge flooding, and because they're old houses, low-lying areas, the houses get flooded because they're at 4 to 5 feet elevation, and then you have other areas that just completely flood. I mean, in the time I've been here, I've seen countless times where people's properties get flooded because of rain or storm surge. It's basically a low-lying area with a lot of homelessness, and those are the two biggest downsides that West Bradenton faces. And let me just emphasize that these are not small problems. Homelessness in an area that isn't that really poor, or just like a normal area full of homelessness, no, people aren't going to live near that. A lot of these homeless people are up all night thugging, is the only way I can describe it. On the particular day that I filmed this footage, I had 3 people aggressively panhandling. I had one guy, he gets in front of your car with a bicycle, blocks you in as you're entering the shopping plazas, and then they demand money. This is a huge and very common problem in West Bradenton. You're pulling into one of these shopping plazas. Next thing you know, a homeless person with a bicycle and a trailer or some shopping carts blocks you in, and they don't let you pass unless you give them money. So it's not like they're on the side of the road panhandling. Though these people are bold and almost demanding aggressively, and they're up all night digging through garbage cans, creeping behind people's properties. I recently talked to a business owner here in West Bradenton that I go to a lot, and they were telling me that they walked outside their business and there was 2 homeless people outside wearing ski masks, making all the employees run back into the business and lock the doors because when they went outside, there's people in ski masks. So don't think that these are just people that are out on the side of the road and they're not going to affect you. Like, no, these people, they're desperate, man. They're digging through garbage cans. They're boxing you in. And it's happened to me like all the time. This isn't like a rare thing. I don't think we got it on video, but when I pulled into this parking lot, there was a guy right there and he was kind of like aggressively panhandling us. Well, so it's one of those situations where like you pull into these shopping plazas to go to Publix or something. And these people, they're not just like, hey, hello, or with a sign. They're like, they'll box you in, and they're very aggressive if you don't give them something. So this has become a trend here in West Bradenton with the homeless people, that they're more aggressive than ever. And it makes life very difficult for the regular people because you feel threatened, you feel scared. You don't know if they're going to attack you, if they're going to throw something at your vehicle. And many times when they do it, it's in places where like you can't really be boxed in there because you got cars behind you honking the horn. So it really has become a problem with the homelessness in West Bradenton, and it's visible everywhere you go in West Bradenton. It's a problem, and an area this nice shouldn't really have this problem, but again, this county of Manatee is just plagued with homelessness. So the other problem you have is, like, let's say here, you have to move kind of on the sidewalk to see the oncoming cars. I'm also in a pickup truck, so I almost have to get as close as I can to make that turn because of my turning radius. So looking at the sidewalk this way, I can already see homeless people from behind me walking towards me. And what they do is they have bicycles, and when they see you like here, they'll come and they'll say that you're blocking the sidewalk, and they'll throw stuff at your car, and they'll like try to make an altercation out of you being on the sidewalk. So they're very possessive, and they just basically look for opportunities to confront people. And I don't know if they do it to get attention or to panhandle, but this is a constant problem here in West Bradenton, where it doesn't even matter what you're doing. Like here, I don't really have a choice. You can see I'm in a large truck and I have to make a left turn, so I have to get as far forward as possible. Easily, as I'm waiting for a break in the traffic, I can already see people coming at me from the other direction, coming to confront me because I'm on the sidewalk. Now, this doesn't really happen throughout Bradenton, doesn't happen in Sarasota or Lakewood Ranch. This is a West Bradenton issue. It gets old very quickly. You're driving around minding your business, and here's these homeless people that are trying to like push shopping carts and throw them against your car or blocking the entrances to businesses. I think the reason they do it is because it's a suburban area and they feel, or not suburban, but like a nice area. So the homeless people feel that they can kind of intimidate the regular people because they're homeless. So they use that to panhandle aggressively. And really, like, if you live in West Bradenton, it is a beautiful area. I don't hate your area of town. In fact, we've looked into moving into this area for its convenience, like being close to the beaches. But the reality is we live in Lakewood Ranch because I'm not going to deal with living in a place where there's constantly homeless people digging through the garbage, looking in the vehicles. You know, I'm not going to live in an area where where the homeless people have so much power that they can do whatever the crap they want. And basically you're at the mercy of these homeless people scratching your car, or, you know, it's just too much pressure. I'm not going to live there because of that. And, you know, if you live in West Bradenton, you know that what I'm saying is true. I'm not lying. I'm not making this stuff up. This is the reality of homelessness in West Bradenton. And I feel like over the last year, it's increased dramatically in West Bradenton. And I don't understand why the homeless people in West Bradenton feel like they can just kind of harass everybody else. But that's really the situation right now. To the point where I don't even really like to help the homeless people in West Bradenton. Like, I'll help homeless people in Lakewood Ranch or in Sarasota or Bradenton. But in West Bradenton, I don't even look at the homeless people because they're always on this aggressive, entitled attitude, and it gets old fairly quickly. But endemically, one of the problems that West Bradenton has is that the buildings are old, the plazas are old, the houses are old, the apartments are old. It's really an old, rundown area, and just about everywhere you look, you see homelessness. Like, you can see this woman here just sitting in the parking lot, and there isn't really like wooded areas out here because it's all urban. So you'll see the homeless people, like what that lady was doing, they'll lay on a little grass behind a tree or something. They don't really have a lot of possessions, and they just kind of sit there. And some of them are cool, some of them are disabled people that, you know, in wheelchairs and stuff, but for some reason a lot of them are very aggressive. And then they tell you they're hungry, but when you offer them food, they don't want the food, they want money. So I'm not going to give a homeless person money. I'm not. Like, I'll give them food, but I'm not going to give them money because we know what they're going to do. And part of the problem here is like they run this whole, oh, I'm really hungry thing. Like they act like they're desperately hungry, but they're just really desperately feeding for something. So all that contributes to West Bradenton on the surface appearing to be a beautiful beachside area to live in, but in reality, somewhat of a nightmare. The closer you get to the busier streets, the closer you are to the homelessness. And then the further you are from the busier streets, the closer you are to the water, the nicer it gets, but then the more risk you have of your property flooding. So it's like you're either dealing with the homelessness in your face or with the fact you're close to the water, which it could flood. All these things have created kind of a crappy situation for West Bradenton. But wait, there's more. As you guys know, I Uber drive late at night in this area for a little extra money and just to get out and meet people and get more familiar with the area. And it is shocking how much trafficking takes place in West Bradenton. Literally almost every single night, I have to kick somebody out of the Uber or prevent them from getting in because they're clearly involved in criminal activity. Some of these apartment complexes in West Bradenton are very bad. So the residential areas are more chill. The apartment complexes out here, based on my Uber driving experience, it is complete crappery. I would say hands down a quarter of the people that I'm transporting in West Bradenton are involved in some type of visible, clear illegal activity like making a delivery. It is shocking how much trafficking activity goes down in West Bradenton, especially at night. You got people running into Sarasota for deliveries. You got people running into Palmetto for deliveries. You got people that are running locally for deliveries. It's insane how much activity takes place in West Bradenton. It's shocking. It's not even normal. It's absurd how many times as I'm Uber driving through here at night, you can tell that the person's doing a delivery. These apartment complexes are nothing more than apartment trap houses. And it's like some of these apartment complexes, there's like 3 or 4 people that are just constantly trapping out of these apartments using Uber drivers. It's insane how much activity takes place in West Bradenton. It's abnormal and it's common. Like, The last time I drove in West Bradenton was last night. Now there's a Wawa gas station, and I'm at this Wawa, and it's kind of in the center, but it's already close to West Bradenton. And the passenger gets in, he has a Slurpee, and I'm like, hey bro, please make sure you don't spill that. The guy looks at me and says, do you think I'm stupid? Do I look stupid to you? People spill stuff in your car on a regular basis. It's normal. There's a reason why I'm telling him this. It's because it's normal. People spill stuff in my car all the freaking time. This individual decided to make a conflict out of it. So I said, hey, bro, why don't you just go ahead and get out? Get out of my car. I'm in the ride right now. He refused to get out of the car, made threats, told me that if I didn't go through with the ride, I was going to get hurt. And this was a big dude. He wasn't little. He was wearing a wife beater, big dude, talking about, you're going to take me where I'm going. If you don't take me, you're going to get hurt. And I said, get out, get out. He didn't listen. When I took off my seatbelt, then he finally opened the door and ran out because he realized I was going to extract him. And I guess he, might have been all talk. But regardless, this dude was very aggressive. He even made threats. He told me, you're going to take me here. And I could see a female driver getting scared and complying with him, but I didn't comply. I said, hey, bro, no, you're getting out. But he was threatening. He literally took me hostage, you could say. He was like, no, you're not getting out of this. You're doing this. You're taking me where I'm going, and you're going to get hurt if you don't do it. This guy literally tried to take me hostage, just the way I would describe it. And when I took off my seatbelt and he realized I was going to go back there, he ran out of the car. But this is normal. And it's like you have a lot of really bad passengers Uber driving in West Bradenton, and it's normal. It's not like that in Sarasota. It's not like that in Parrish. I Uber drive in Tampa, Fort Myers, Jacksonville, and I will tell you, the people that you have to deal with in West Bradenton and to an extent Palmetto are just the cream of the crop when it comes to uncivilized people. But the biggest problem late at night is you pull up to one of these apartment complexes and the person gets in the car and they reap. You can smell what they have on them. And, you're like, hey, man, you're clearly doing this. I don't want to be part of it. So, no, nothing personal. I just got to end the ride. I can't be part of this. And some of them get aggressive. Most of them are pretty cool. They're like, no, man, some of them try to work it out with like, hey, I'll take care of you, this and that. But no, I'm not going to be part of, your transaction. So you got to get out. And the amount of people that just do this in West Bradenton with Uber driving, it's like insane. There's just a lot of criminal people out here. There's a lot of drug activity. And I would not want to live in West Bradenton if you have very little tolerance for that. And I don't. I really don't want to be around people that are doing illegal activities. And for them, it's normal. But anyways, Uber driving in this area, it's like that. Does that mean everybody's bad? I drop off that crazy guy that pretty much tried to take me hostage. Drop him off, forced him off basically. And the next passenger was an Asian person who gave me a $50 tip. So there are great people out here, and some of the best tips that I have got Uber driving have been in West Bradenton. So what I'm trying to tell you is there are great, awesome people, and I really enjoy a lot of the passengers that I get in West Bradenton. 80% of people are incredible, but I have learned while Uber driving the entire metropolitan area that there's a lot of bad things happening in West Bradenton. And while at first it may appear to be a good area, this is the type of area you practically don't even want to Uber drive late at night. Like you'll feel safe in Lakewood Ranch, some parts of Bradenton, East Bradenton for the most part, especially out towards Lakewood Ranch is nice. But out here at night, dude, like West Bradenton at night is as dangerous as like the core of the city or Palmetto. It's bad. Like the amount of people you're dealing with that are dangerous and involved in illegal activities, it's disheartening. Now, as well, we're on Manatee right now. You might have seen me do a video now. So this is kind of where West Bradenton ends and the city of Bradenton starts, the core of the city. So the traffic in this part of Bradenton is just abnormal, especially in the wintertime. So one of the other problems with living in West Bradenton is that you're practically behind the entire gridlock of Bradenton. So if you need to get out to the interstate for work, you're boxed in. If you need to get anywhere in the town, you're boxed in. And this is Manatee, and it's light now during the summer, but during the winter, this is a 15 to 20 minute ride to go a mile. So I guess part of the problem with West Bradenton is that it is kind of somewhat isolated, trapped within the grid pattern of Bradenton, and that makes it very much an undesirable area when dealing with traffic. Now, there are beautiful neighborhoods, especially along the river. These are beautiful houses with big mango trees. It's a beautiful area. There's no doubt about it. West Bradenton is beautiful. It's literally one of the most beautiful neighborhoods in Florida, I would even venture to say, despite the fact that it doesn't get the recognition of Naples or some of these other cities. It really is beautiful. But it doesn't matter how beautiful your city is. If it's scary to drive Uber at night in your neighborhood, you have a problem. The previous time I drove in West Bradenton, I had a young kid. Now, I'm a little bit more lenient towards very young people involved in these crimes because I feel like I can talk some sense into them, try to at least, and I'm getting very blunt with the young people. The older people, you're screwed up. If you're in your 40s and 50s or 30s and you're doing this type of stuff, you're an adult. You know what you're doing is stupid, risky, worthless, and that's your life. I'm going to kick you out of my Uber and tell you you're a piece of crap. But if I get somebody that's like 18, 19 years old and they're doing that stuff, sometimes I'll go through with the ride. I'm not going to lie to you. And I'll tell them, I say, hey, bro, I can clearly see what you're doing. It's not hard to tell what you're doing. I can see what you're doing. Have you considered living the rest of your life in prison? Have you considered getting shot and left in a wheelchair? Have you considered perhaps, living a normal life? And the thing about being an Uber driver is you do have to go through with some of the bad people to see how they run their program so that you can at least understand how these things work because it's for your own safety. So as an Uber driver, I have ran through a lot of people that I know they're up to no good and I let them finish their program just so I can learn from it and be sharper in the future. But it is nonetheless very disappointing to see how many people, especially young people in West Bradenton, are involved in all these activities. And I try to tell them, a little bit kind of like a run up of their life. Like, hey, bro, how old are you? You're 18 years old. You want to spend the rest of your life in prison? Like, you want to have a wife, a family, a career? You want to do something with your life, or you want to be in prison for the rest of your life? Like, what are you doing with yourself out here? When I first started, I was kind of very hesitant about these people and just kicked them all out. But other times I try to talk some sense into them because I realize, like, especially the really young ones, it's like they have no role models, they have no examples, they have nobody to tell them right from wrong because some of these people's lives are so entrenched in crime that they think it's normal. And the other thing is, despite the fact West Bradenton is beautiful, and even Palmetto, now we're crossing the bridge over the Manatee River, going into Palmetto, another beautiful area, you can't live in Palmetto. It's the criminal element has gotten so bad there that it's made living in Palmetto a crap hole. I recently went into a store to make a transaction, and one of the employees tried to fight with me. So it's just a level of ignorance that is not typical in Florida. This is more like an Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana type of thing. But despite how beautiful these areas are, there are problems in these areas. And I find that living in a place like Lakewood Ranch, I don't have access to the beaches as close. It's not as like authentic. The food certainly isn't as good, but at least when it comes to safety, you're better off. But without a doubt, the biggest incentive of living in West Bradenton is that you are 15 minutes from Bradenton Beach, Anna Maria Island, and it's hard to put a price tag on living close to a place this beautiful. No place is going to be perfect, and these are just some of the biggest things that I would worry about if you're moving to West Bradenton. West Bradenton is beautiful. It's close to amazing beaches. There's great food, great culture. There's a little bit of diversity. There's a Taste of Cuba food truck. There's another Cuban food truck on Manatee. I deal with a lot of Asian people here as well. It seems like there's a growing Asian community. I see a lot of Vietnamese, a lot of Indians. Not like massive, but just enough to where there is diversity here. Most people here are going to be from the Midwest. A lot of transplants are now coming from Michigan, Iowa, Indiana, Ohio, Pennsylvania are the states that I deal with the most out here. And of course, you have a lot of locals. Bradenton is an older city, so you still have a lot of the locals. Without a doubt, I guess the real reason you would want to live in West Bradenton is to be close to the beaches. There really isn't the option to buy affordably on the islands. You'd practically have to be a millionaire to live on the island. So if you want to be close to these beaches, you are still going to have to deal with some other disadvantages. I feel like if you're moving to this area, I would just give you the following warnings to summarize the video. You are behind the grid pattern of Bradenton, which means if you're commuting to other areas for work, traffic will be a nightmare. Getting on the beaches can be a nightmare even during the winter, but if you're heading out from West Bradenton, There's no easy way out of West Bradenton. You have to drive through the urban core, and during the winter months, it will be unbearable. Homelessness is visible. While most of these homeless people are harmless, disabled people, a lot of them can engage in aggressive panhandling, and it does become annoying. While Uber driving, I have noted that this area has a propensity for a lot of delinquency, and drug addiction is by far a major problem in this area of West Bradenton. And finally, do your due diligence before buying, because a lot of these areas are low-lying areas, and eventually one day a massive hurricane will bring a storm surge to this area that will leave Bradenton in a completely different condition. Hopefully it doesn't happen, but if you're buying real estate, keep in mind that there are high areas. Look at the elevation maps and make sure that you are not in a low-lying area, because while it hasn't happened yet, it is definitely possible. And if you're buying real estate, you don't want to make that mistake. My favorite thing about West Bradenton is the architecture, the landscaping, the beautiful beaches, and the large mango trees. It's beautiful to see these massive mango trees in some of the older neighborhoods. It really is a beautiful place to live, but again, it comes with some downsides. There it is, the pros and cons of living in West Bradenton. This is a very honest opinion. I don't think you're going to get an opinion this honest from a realtor, but if you're moving to West Bradenton, these are some of the things you'll definitely have to contemplate.